My next guest is an amazing man. He led the fight, I told you about this earlier in the hour, to get rid of the use of race as a criterion in public admissions into colleges and universities, into hiring, and into contracting. It was a very successful campaign. It won overwhelmingly in California, and now guess what? They're now trying to reverse it so that race is again used as a variable in hiring and in contracting and granting admissions into colleges and universities. He was born in segregated Louisiana, a very successful career in business, became a UC regent, and is now the president of Californians for Equal Rights and the No on 16 campaign. The website, Californians, that's plural, Californiansforequalrights.org. Please welcome to the program, Ward Connerly. Ward, how are you?
Hi, Brother Larry. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Ward, before we get started, I told my listeners I was going to mention this to you. When you were doing this campaign to get rid of race as a criterion, you were the victim of vicious attacks. None more vicious than Diane Watson, who was then, I think, a state senator. Later on, she ran for and got elected to Congress. And she said, and I'm quoting, "He's married to a white woman. He wants to be white. He wants a colorless society. He has no ethnic pride. He doesn't want to be black," end of quote. And then, as you know, Ward, a day or so later, reporters asked her about that. She said, "That's right, I said it, and I don't take it back." And never did. And then ran for and got elected to Congress. Now, David Duke couldn't say something like this and get away with it.
You're right. I will never forget that experience. I thought that maybe she was play acting or something, but she wasn't. And with those words, she described the utter ugliness of racism and that nobody has a monopoly on it. Black people can be just as guilty of it and are often as anybody else. And that's why your Uncle Tom movie, of which I am ignored, is so important, because you're bringing a dimension to this whole discussion about race that we need to have, and we haven't been.
Ward, what was your reaction when Joe Biden publicly said, "My running mate is going to be a female"?
I thought that we had stooped politically to one of the lowest points in our history, because with that one statement, he was ruling out every male in California or the nation who would be otherwise eligible. Many of whom had outcompeted her. Pete Buttigieg and all of the other male candidates who had performed more competitively than she had, but they were just no longer considered. Their life didn't matter because Vice President Biden was agreeing to identity politics, and it was a low point for me.
Mm-hmm. My guest is Ward Connerly, president of the Californians for Equal Rights and the No on 16 campaign website, Californiansforequalrights.org. Ward, let me tell you why I think this is just so bizarre. This thing has come back, that they want to use race again. As you know, after you were successful in your proposition, it is true that there were fewer blacks admitted into the more competitive UC campuses, UCLA and Berkeley. However, they were more likely to go to a campus, UC Riverside or other school, where they were more likely to graduate. So we had fewer dropouts. Right. We had just as many, if I recall, just as many minority students, black and brown students attending UC after 209 got passed. It's just that they were at different schools and therefore had a better graduation rate. So what's the problem?
Larry, I just don't get it. The only conclusion I can reach is that for some who embrace this notion that it's okay to use race, whatever that means to them, to make public policy, that using that is far more important than the actual results. Mm-hmm. We have a team of volunteers who've been doing yeoman's work Steve Miller and Simone Brown and a lot of others, too many to mention, who've done a lot of research on this. And people would be happily amazed to find all of the progress that the University of California has made in terms of diversity. Now, the jury is still out on whether some of these things are going to produce campuses of excellence, because you do away with the SAT and you do away with standardized testing, and you're opening yourself up to some factors that you may not like. Mm-hmm. But in terms of producing this so-called diversity, they've proven that you can do it without the explicit use of race.
Ward Connerly is my guest, again, president of the Californians for Equal Rights and the No on 16 campaign website, californianforequalrights.org. Ward, I remember after Proposition 209 got passed and then began to analyze the results, it turned out that the percentage of white students at the competitive campuses was about the same. The percentage of black and brown students went down substantially. The percentage of Asian students went up substantially, which suggests that Asians were being disproportionately shafted by the use of race as a factor.
And the pressure from the legislature, especially the Latino caucus, was so substantial that the university had to do something about it. And so what they did, those in the admissions process, is they started applying standards that were proxies for race, not explicit use of race, but proxies for race, and those had the greatest effect on applicants who were white, because whites weren't going to say too much about alleging any discrimination. Mm-hmm. Asians had been, those of Asian descent, had been outperforming every other demographic group, and we should be applauding that. But when you have all this pressure coming from the legislature, which funds some of your budget, get more of our people in, then you have to do something. And the victims of all of this were white applicants, in my opinion, in order to yield more seats to those who are, quote, people of color.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Ward Connerly, president of Californians for Equal Rights and the No on 16 campaign, and the website, californianforequalrights.org. Ward, as always, thank you so much for taking the time. God bless.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Larry.